Hi, I'm Caroline.
And I'm Megan.
And this is the Songwriter Diaries,
a podcast by songwriters for songwriters. Hi, guys.
Hi. Thank you for having us. Yeah, we're very excited to chat with you guys.
Woo.
Spooky owl noises. Yeah.
Yep. Spooky owl noises. So why don't we just dive right in and have each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves, how you got to where you are, a little bit about Clementine Was Right, all the good stuff.
Yeah. Do you want to start? You want me to?
I think you should start
with
the band stuff.
Okay.
Probably.
Well, my name is Mike Young, and I started Clementine Was Right back in Santa Fe. Probably, I feel like I change the year every time I tell the story, but let's say 2018 or 2019, something like that. It really sort of came to life, and yeah, I grew up in rural Northern California, but I've lived all over the place, in Oregon and Massachusetts and Baltimore and Portland, Oregon, Alaska, Nashville, New Mexico, and now we live in Denver. And yeah,
Jeez.
I spent a lot of my 20s sort of doing writing, and I made a magazine for a while and also published books and wrote, and I was very involved, sort of like the DIY literature equivalent, of like the DIY music scene. And yeah, really, been playing music and writing music my whole life, but really sort of got back into it when I moved to New Mexico and sort of doing it in earnest. And yeah, it's and then Gion and I met in Santa Fe, and yeah, we actually, it was sort of funny because we went to the same grad school for writing at UMass Amherst in Western Massachusetts, but several years apart. So we met through like some people who were between us in years,
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's sort of my story in a nutshell. How about you, Gia?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm from New Mexico. I also went to grad school in Massachusetts for poetry, and I guess like my parents both worked at the Opera House in Santa Fe when I was a kid, and so I guess that's sort of like my entry into music stuff. But like in New Mexico, at least back when I was a teenager, there wasn't any like live music culture like at all. Like Meow Wolf didn't exist yet and stuff.
Or House
So
21.
yeah, I didn't really get into going to shows even until I was in college, and then I was going to like basement punk shows and stuff in Vermont and in
Yes.
Massachusetts. And getting into like the 2010s, like that pop punk scene that came out of all of that, like like New Jersey and
Philly.
Philadelphia.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's sort of funny that I do what I do even with the band, because it seems like a weird like cheat code that I invented for myself to be in a band without playing an instrument.
Right.
Or having to learn how to play one at all.
Right.
I think it's iconic.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
And when did your interest in combining the music and poetry at your live shows kind of come to be, in a sense?
We actually have a very specific answer for that.
Oh my gosh, we love it. We love it.
Yeah, it was Riley. I think it was Riley. It was Riley. Okay, so we were on tour. So the structure of the band is very fluid, and in the sense that it's sort of a collective, which is like a euphemism for I'm always asking everyone I know if they want to be in the band this week.
I love
But
that.
in August of 2022, the people who were in the band, we went on tour, and it was Riley Marino and Adam Cabrera and Alec Doniger, and I always get that wrong, but yeah, and we were out in California, and we had just had a few days off, and we had been to the Redwoods, very beautiful in Humboldt County, and really very beautiful time. And Gion had written not even actually really a poem, sort of like a lyric essay, I would say. And he read it for everybody in the band, and it was really beautiful, and we were all very moved by it. And then we were playing a show at the Torch Club in Sacramento, which is one of our favorite bars. Shout out to the Torch Club.
Shout
Just
out.
really awesome people, but it was a bar band set, right? So we had to like, okay, how are we going to fill 3 hours? And we're not really like a bar band kind of band, we're not really out there playing the Eagles or whatever
Yeah.
covers. And so, yeah, I guess it was Riley who was like, what if Gion does his poem and then we do like ethereal sort of background music, and everybody was really into it. And we were like, yeah, let's try it. And then it honestly went even better than I think we imagined it would go. Like, because it wasn't, it's not really like, I mean, it's not at all, well, I think, yeah, it was very moving to, there happened to be some people in the bar that night who were like celebrating like a memorial for their friend, and the bartender also knew this person. Everybody was very emotional. Like Gion's poem made the bartender cry, and it was all very like, and we were like, wow, that's a good idea. And so, yeah, we've kept doing it. And, I think that whoever is sort of playing music relates to that experience in a different ways. Like, I think like Riley and Adam and Alec, like, they're like, oh, like somebody's talking, like it's very like jazz, right? And then other people, there's sort of like a a version of the band, a colony. No, that's a bad word for it. A vessel of the band that lives in Northwest Arkansas, because of like some Santa Fe connections and people moving there, and they like, we brought the idea to them, and they were like, oh yeah, that's like church. We're gonna play some like church music, and Gion's gonna like pontificate, and so they were like, yeah, we. And
oh my gosh,
yeah, it's honestly like, I think it's gone super well. Like, people just really dig it, and I mean, I think it helps that Gion's a really good poet, and it's a very like. I think the thing about Gion's poetry is that it is super relatable and moving and cathartic, and I think it really makes people want to pay attention to their lives and romanticize and sort of like eulogize their lives. And there's nothing about Gion's poetry that makes you feel like, oh, I feel anxious about like, am I understanding this, or like, am I doing this right, which is not, I think, poetry's fault, like writ large, but I do think, I mean, like, there is often like that association. And honestly, I feel like it's gotten better in my lifetime. Like, maybe, I don't know what's going on in high schools these days, but I don't think high school is ruining poetry as much for the youth as it did when I was in high school.
I agree.
It really did.
But which is all to say, I think Gion's poetry, and then we're very lucky and grateful to play with such great musicians who are so. Everybody that we've played with, we've been very lucky, and they pay really close attention. It's just like a really magical experience, I think, and everybody really loves it in the band too, like as part of the set.
Yeah, that's
it's
awesome.
Always my favorite part of your shows.
Thanks.
And the songs too.
Yeah, the part that you're not really in, my favorite. Yeah. That's incredible.
I'm always waiting for you to get through those trash songs so you can get to Gion's song.
Where's Gion?
My favorite part is the Reno song. I love that song.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Well, anywho.
I'm sorry. I was teasing you too vigorously there. Yeah.
No.
It's my favorite part of the set too.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I was gonna say, it was like my favorite part so much that Colin went and stole the idea from you. And Tomato Soup had Gion come up at our last show and read a poem, which was so fun. I think it's just like, you guys have started a trend.
That's amazing.
I think it's cool. Yeah. No, I mean, I feel really good, and like, it does feel like a cheat code, it really does. Like, Well, again, I think it's very like I grew up, I mean, I'm not that old or anything, but I grew up in like people, it was just much harsher, I think.
Mm,
Like people were meaner to each other
yeah.
and it was embarrassing to like poetry. And I just don't feel
Mm,
like that nowadays. Like people find the band because you know, a lot of like what we do online, what sort of I started doing like during the pandemic was sort of making these kind of like poem video kind of things on TikTok and stuff.
mm,
And the people who find that are like these young people, like teenagers and people, and they just seem to really vibe with it. And it doesn't seem, it's just obvious to them. It's just they're so nonchalant about liking poetry, which is like
yeah.
very cool because it was not like that when I was like 17. It was like embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it kind of a different learning curve to learn how to perform your poems? Like, or are you just reading them? Because I haven't seen you. I'm sorry. But I'm like, are you just reading them or is it a performance or what's the vibe?
I mean, I don't memorize them. I guess maybe I
Mm,
could, or maybe I should. I don't know. That's never really been it's not like spoken word
mm-hmm.
where you're like part of the performance is like the athleticism of memorization,
Yeah.
um, which is definitely a thing and is good. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
just not really what I've tried to do. And like, I mean, I have a lot of experience like from before I started doing this of just reading, like doing poetry readings
Mm.
like normally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like it was a little of it is a little bit of a learning curve because it is like it's not really like doing music. Like it's not really like
Mm,
playing music with someone where it's like you have a part that you do.
yeah.
Um really it's like I have a part but it's not like there's no rhythm. There's not like a like an actual
Yeah.
melody or something. So a lot of it is like I think the people I pay the most attention the person I pay the most attention to is I mean I think this is true for like any band but it's like
Mm-hmm.
always the drummer because you know that's the loudest thing so you have to like
Yeah.
I feel like when we've been on tour and stuff I've really gotten into like rhythms with different people where it's like I know we don't rehearse anything and we don't plan it but it's like I know what they're going to do
Mm-hmm.
on the lines and stuff and so I sort of like
Yeah.
will pause or whatever and let like loud stuff and sometimes I'll like mess it up and like step onto the loud thing and then it'll get like lost or something
Mm,
but yeah I would say that's like the biggest learning curve. I feel like I had a I did a reading one time in Massachusetts and someone pulled me aside afterwards and is like you need to read a lot slower and read less stuff and I was like okay like I could do that and I feel like I really have taken that to heart and I feel like that has always been a big part of it for me is like
mm-hmm.
trying to be like okay you have to go even slower than you think you need to like
Mm-hmm.
make this work and especially I think with music it really like with the music behind it it really like it really works better that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I
forces
don't
you.
read the same way like I would read
Mm-hmm.
like I don't read like normally the same way I would read with a band, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It's like it's
Yeah.
pretty different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also
That makes
feel
sense.
like I've like watched or and heard your work like change over this last year and the poems you've written since we started performing. I don't know how you feel, how much of a factor I guess you feel it is, but I definitely feel like I've watched your poems become more like rooted in that experience of sort of like casting this voice out into the crowd of dark
Mm.
strangers, you know, like I I was reading something the other day where like again the young people like teenagers say like chat what do you think like they
Mm-hmm.
have this sort of what it's being yeah
Yep. I'm
you've
on the
encountered
TikTok,
this
I see.
you're on the TikTok
I
yeah
gotta stay
well it's
hip.
like it's very interesting because like right people are calling it like a fourth person pronoun which is
Mm,
I don't know but it's very interesting because it's like yeah it is different than saying like you all or different there is like a breaking of the fourth wall right and
mm-hmm.
like it's a certain type of communication with this sort of imagined audience and a certain type of relationship. And I feel like I've watched your poems like engage more in that relationship and sort of become less
Mm.
interior. And I do think that there's rhythm and like there's like an emotional melody that is like that like comes in the poems, and
Mm-hmm.
it's fun to like improvise toward that or try to discover it in as
Yeah.
a musician, right? Like playing guitar while Gion is doing the poem, and try to sort of like reveal through the music some of the like underlying emotional structure or whatever of the
Mm.
poem, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or accompany, I guess, not reveal,
Yeah.
but accompany.
Mm-hmm.
That's so
Yeah.
cool, though. It just feels. I love poetry. I love to write poetry. I don't think anyone will ever read it or hear it or anything because it's so personal to me. So it's wild that
Yeah.
something, like you said, it is so internal, or at least it starts that way. And for me, for some reason, it seems more so that way with poetry than with songwriting. But I think it's because when I'm writing a song, I'm like, oh, could I play this like out for somebody, or could I
Right.
release it?
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm writing poetry, it's just like my inner deep thoughts that I'm like, this will never see the light of day.
Right.
So,
The ears aren't lurking,
mhm.
the perspective ears,
Yeah.
or eyes.
Yeah.
Kind of going off of that, what are some key differences and similarities between writing poetry and songwriting? What are some of those you think?
I think for me, poetry has been there was this video game that came out many years ago now, and I always pronounce the name of it wrong, but it's like Katamari Damacy or something.
Mm-mm.
And it's a very abstract video game, but you're basically like this weird interstellar prince, but you just like roll around collecting things and they like stick to you. You
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I'm saying wrong.
This sounds like
I
my
always think
game.
of it as Katamari Democracy, but that's not it at all. But I it's like rolling around, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like
Yeah.
egalitarian. And that to me is what poetry, well, it is. You just collect everything, and that to me is like what poetry is. And like the joy is finding the path, is weaving the path between these disparate elements, right?
Mm.
Whereas in songwriting, to me, the pleasure is in finding ways to turn very sort of complex feelings, not trying to like honor the complexity through like accumulation so much, like the way poetry, a lot of times with poetry, I'm like, life is messy and complicated. Here's a
Mm-hmm.
messy and complicated poem, you know?
Mm-hmm.
With songwriting, it's like trying to not lose any of the messiness or emotional complexity, but really hone it into like these mantra like lines and then these structures. I love the
Mm.
challenge of the structure, you know, like the syllables and the rhymes and the melodies. And I mean, I do think language is ultimately like very primary for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, more than I don't know, I don't know about more than, but yeah, language is very primary for me. And I love when something feels not like it needs to music, like it wouldn't be cool language by itself, but
Mm.
just that it sort of vaults into this new urgency if you sing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell you're a writer by that answer. I was like, how are you putting these words together? And it's so beautiful. Yes.
I
No, that
know.
makes so much sense. And one of our questions, you got ahead of us, was if you
Sorry.
so rude. No, I'm just kidding. Is how you find the balance between telling an impactful story while also creating a catchy song. And that could also translate to how do you balance telling an impactful story while also creating a poem that people can actually understand and latch on to.
Yeah, do you want to go for that?
I can.
Yeah.
We want to hear
Uh,
both of you
Aw.
talk all the time. So
Catchy poems
Yeah.
exist.
catchy
Your poem is
poems.
My
catchy.
first question.
You're-
I think that, like, I don't know. I mean, I think that, like, a lot of writing is about trusting people to put things together
Mm.
in their own heads, regardless if it's the actual story you're trying to tell or not. Like
Mm.
I feel I always think about I'm sorry if Nate ever listens to this, he's going to be embarrassed, but my friend Nate, who has played guitar for Mike for a long time, um he and I both like this band called the Menzingers, and they have this one song that came out a few years ago, and the actual lyric is like, oh God, it's like something about chords. It's like about chords and having sex on the floor, but then um, he thought he thought like just the way it's phrased and the way that like because they kind of it's like a sort of a punk adjacent band, like
Mhm.
it's sort of like the it's Portland, that song.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's like mixed, like the vocals are mixed low enough where it's hard to understand it, and
Yeah.
he thought it was about eating peas, and he still because he couldn't hear the words and he didn't look them up, and he still really liked the song. He
Mhm.
was like, this is my favorite song on this album, and it's also about eating peas. And I was like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
No. No.
And I feel like that's like so much of writing is like, as long as you can do something that like even if people don't get the message, or because I feel like I was hung up on this forever of like I go into poetry workshop or whatever, and you're like, well, like, people criticize you and you're like, well, you just don't understand. Like, you don't understand this image. You weren't there.
Right.
And it's
Yep.
like, well, at the end of the day, it sort of makes that like, regardless of whether or not they understand it, if there's a question of understanding, then it's a bad image. It's a
Right.
bad line. Because even if their takeaway is wrong, as long as they like, or wrong, quote unquote, like quote, big quotes on wrong, but like,
Yeah.
even if it's not how you experienced it, if they find it meaningful, like then it's doing its job. And I
Right.
feel like that is a big part of it. And like I also feel like this is true for songwriting too, but if you can like put two, I mean, a lot of people have written about this, but if you can put two things right next to each other and call a relationship just by putting them beside each other, and then letting the audience like decide what that relationship is,
Yeah.
like that's a huge part of it too.
Yeah.
Cornell box of
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's what I love about like rhyme in songwriting, like it just creates this engine of like anticipation, where you've it once you and you feel it, right? Like it's intuitive to the listener, like once you've figured out the rhyme scheme, or you felt it, and then you're waiting for that next sound that is echoing the sound you heard before, and you have this limited, and you're like, what's it going to be? And this is all happening like unconsciously for the listener, but it's just very exciting. And then, yeah, it suggests just the power, like you're saying, Gion, of like the relationship between these things just because they happen to sound the same is like so exciting and evocative, and just, yeah, like that John Prine line that's like, she reminds me of a chess game with someone I admire, or a picnic in the
Yeah.
rain after a prairie fire. And then you've got like admire and fire in this relationship that are like, it's just like so wild. And it's novel. It's like, wow, my brain has not put those together. And it's just like there's such pleasure, and I think for a brain, and like
Yeah.
stitch those stitches, and you're like, ooh, yeah, that feels good to think about those things in relation. I've never thought about them in relation before. Yeah.
It's so crazy to think about like the lack of control you have over the message too. Like I don't think I've ever told this story on here because it makes me so sad, but one of the first singles that I released for my album, called The Navy's Coming, I submitted it for a song like contest, I guess, in college, and I submitted it, and it's basically just about like a tumultuous relationship with myself and kind of dealing with that and coming to terms. It's a sad song, but it's upbeat, but it's about that relationship with myself. And I got feedback from somebody, anonymous, no idea. And they were not liking it because they thought that I was glorifying a toxic relationship and that like this was not good and this is harmful and this should not be out there, whatever. And I was like, that wasn't the point. And like, so there's both sides, right? Like you have both meaningful and positive impacts or meaningful and not so positive impacts. So that was scary for me because I'm like, okay, well, this song's already out and I hope other people don't have this interpretation, which they didn't. At least they didn't tell me about it. But it's also like, it's not in my hands anymore. You know, it's like, that's up to their interpretation. And I know what I intended. And just knowing, you know, that your message is good and like, well, it was negative towards myself, but not glorifying a toxic relationship. I'm like, I don't want to be glorifying abuse. Oh my God, no. So,
yeah, whoa, that's crazy.
Meg, you've heard the song. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's like crazy that someone interpreted it like that.
Yeah,
because I mean, I guess I knew what it was about.
Yeah.
But still,
I'm like, it's definitely up to interpretation.
Yeah,
but...
I mean, there's no accounting. There's outliers and stuff too. Like,
for sure.
I remember when I was in grad school in this fiction workshop, and I turned the story, and it was about like these two women who were childhood friends and then like reunited or whatever. And it was, I mean, it wasn't a great story. It was sort of boring, but they you know, it was about friendship, which I think is like a very important and interesting topic. And then there was this dude in the workshop, it was a nice guy. He has a cool name because it's a
Drag him
complete
through the
sentence.
dirt.
Boomer Pinchy is his name. But he was like, no, he's a nice guy. But it was funny because in his letter, you know, in his feedback, he was like, I just feel like you beat around the bush too much about like their relationship. Like you should just have them like make out and like he was convinced that they were like lovers and that I was just being coy. And I was like, they're just friends, bro. They're literally just friends. Like, God. I don't remember. Yeah. But it was like sort of, I used to like go really hard on the idea that like, you must treat your audience, your reader, your listener as though they are like the smartest person in the world because you don't want to disrespect them. And I still sort of think that, but I'm not totally sure that my own personal jury is a little bit out, but certainly I would never disrespect, you know, or like be like, oh, some person who was kind of dumb thought this kind of dumb thing, so now I have to worry about the dummies, you know?
Yeah.
I don't.
It's just like intent versus impact and, you know, trying to navigate that. But it's so much.
Yeah, totally.
For sure.
The weight of the world can't be on all of us, you know? It's just...
Yeah. We can't write for the dummies, you know?
No.
I'm just over it.
I'm over it.
Okay, so moving on. Do you two ever write together? Either like collabing on a song or you know, another kind of writing project, whether it's a poem or a story or whatnot. And if you do, what does that process look like?
I think that we edit each other's work a lot more than we write together. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. We were doing some stuff, especially during the pandemic when everybody was doing things that were just like, oh my God, what am I gonna do today? You know?
Yeah.
But where we were like literally doing like Exquisite Corpse with each other, where we were like writing one line after another. But I would say, yeah, it's more about the editing. I think that it's inevitable, and I mean, I know with you and Colin, Megan, and I mean, and I don't really know anything about your life, Caroline, but like, I think like if you are in a relationship with someone, like, yeah, their modes and ideologies and the thing, you know, you're constantly being like, hey, look at that, and then you're looking at it and being like, oh yeah. And sort of unconsciously being like, why is this interesting, you know, like to the other person? And what you think of is interesting and what you think of is the way to move through the world, like changes a little bit. And I think that's nice, you know, I think that's good.
Yeah.
And so I would say that at least my own work, and I feel like both of our work has definitely been influenced by each other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gion's like, no.
It's really funny.
Actually, you've had no impact on me.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
It's funny because we've interviewed like quite a few couples that are like either both songwriters or like you two, like both writers. Colin and I have been on here, and Caroline interviewed us.
It was like couples therapy.
And I would say, yeah, I would say like it's interesting because a lot of the couples,
excuse me,
kind of have had similar answers to where it's like, well, I'm thinking specifically of like Dave and Mandy from Sway Wild. Like they don't really write together, but they edit each other's work. And same with like Anna Tivell and Jeffrey Martin.
True.
They have like, they don't really co-write, but they will bring a song to the other one and be like, hey, can you like read this over and let me know what you think. And so I think that's really fun like aspect of a relationship when you're both creative people.
Well, I think so often being in a relationship is like co-writing a life together.
Aww.
And so then when you like go and to
stop.
actually
That
write
was so cute.
like a song or a poem or something, there is a little bit of like recovering autonomy, I think, that comes into that. Do you think that?
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that. I also feel like it's not, I just like, I don't know. I don't do a lot of writing with other people. Like in general, I feel like poetry is such a solitary thing, and always has been for me. So it feels like I'm not opposed to the idea of writing with people or anything. It's just like I'm in my lane or whatever, and it's really hard to figure out how to get out of that or want
well, it
to.
definitely feels like a solo sport.
Yeah, it really does.
And this is all also in the realm of language. And of course, if you're talking about songwriting, there's a lot that goes into writing a song beyond just the lyrics, and I'm very into the collaboration there because, I just feel like pretty much, I would say, 100% of the people that I play music with are better musicians than I am. And so I'm always sort of like grateful for the acumen they bring and all the different personalities, like to just like, and just, it's so interesting to me the way when someone like, because I don't write everybody's parts, like I'm just like, here's the melody, here's the chord progression, here's the gist, and like go and write a bass part and do your drums, and like, or lead guitar part, and everybody brings like such interesting like facets of their personality, like whether it's like very in line with their personality, like Riley's gonna do something sort of clever and cheeky or whatever, and, or it's like where people are like surprising me with, because like our friend Adam Cabrera, for example, can be so stoic, but then like so like boppy and like festive with like his bass parts, and like
that's so true.
Yeah, and it's just like it's just like I just love like the way people. Yeah, and I mean, I'm a language guy or whatever, but it almost, I feel like it's people revealing themselves like beyond or underneath language or something. It's very cool. I like that a lot.
Which creators inspire you two?
Oh. I mean, where to even
besides
start?
each other, because like that's cute, but
Right.
that's obvious.
Let's move
I'm like, that's
on from the
obvious. You're
cute.
co-writing a life together. So cute. Yeah.
Right.
Should embroider that on
Co-writing a life together. Yes.
So many pillow ideas.
See it in our merch store.
I don't know. There's a lot of writers out there that I like a lot. I really like just some poets. Some poets I like. One of them is Eileen Miles. Another one is Larry Levis, who I've been pretty into this past year. Um, and um, I mean, I don't know, just so many musicians. I feel like I like made a joke about how the Beach Boys have done more for me as a writer than any like graduate program. But I like do sort of feel that way about music in general, as I feel like I love poetry and I love reading poetry and I feel like very inspired by it, but I often turn to like actual songs for inspiration more than anything else. And I don't know, I mean you said John Prine earlier, but he's definitely one of them. And then I mean, I talked about the Menzingers already, but they're one for sure. The Wonder Years. Gosh, I don't even know. My friend Willie Carlisle is really great.
Yes.
I like do this thing. I have this like new manuscript that I've been working on, this poetry manuscript, and I always do this thing that my friend Rochelle, I always credit her with inventing it, but it's like you assign a song to every single
I love
poem
that.
in the book, and then you make a playlist with the songs and you order them by the song, and then that's how your book is ordered. Like then you order the poems that way. And there's
so
a bunch
cool.
of music on that playlist. My friend Isadora, who's in Denver, she's really good musician and a good writer. And yeah, what about you, Mike?
The name game. Yes. So I grew up listening to like a lot of pop country, you know, I would get up very early. And I didn't like I grew up like my family didn't have a lot of money, but we did have cable, which is actually pretty common. You can, you know, if anybody is curious about how being poor works, they can go read about it. But we had CMT. And yeah, so I would like watch. I just remember like watching "Don't Take the Girl" by Tim McGraw like very early in the morning.
Oh, Tim McGraw's a good one.
And yeah, and then like as a teenager getting into, well, you know, when I was like younger, like older than that, but younger than being a teenager, it was all about like the Wallflowers and Matchbox 20 and Third Eye Blind, and then I started getting into like, oh, I'm gonna be cool. I'm gonna be cooler than everyone in my little my dorky little town, you know, and that's how I'm gonna like overcome the fact that I'm so awkward or whatever. Like Neutral Milk Hotel and like all of that stuff from that era, and you know, like I mean, there's so many amazing songwriters out there, like people working right now who I really admire. Mitski, like Angel Olsen. There's this band called there's this dude named Ryan Davis who had this band called State Champion that I really love his lyrics, and David Berman was a great lyricist, and yeah, John Prine, and there's Katie Crutchfield and Katie I can't remember her last name, but the Wednesday, she writes the songs for Wednesday, and Julia Jacqueline, just a lot of people, I think, and then tons of poets and writers, Frank Stanford. There's a lot of Franks out there for some reason.
Common name.
In the poetry world. Yeah, I don't know, for some reason has a real resonance in like contemporary American poetry. You got like Frank O'Hara, Frank Stanford, Frank Lima. There's a great poet named C.A. Conrad who wrote a book called The Book of Frank. Diane Seuss.
Oh yeah,
the Frank sonnets. I don't know what it is, man, about
all the
word
Franks.
Frank.
It's a name and it's the truth.
There you go.
And it's kind of a funny name.
I also think like, what'd you say?
It's like kind of a funny name.
It's kind of a funny name.
Like as a kid, you like either name things like Frank or Bob, or you know, like Frank's up there for sure.
Yeah, it's a mouth sound that's like funny to end with. Like it's like Frank, you know. I also think that like as I've gotten older, I don't really know what this is, or it's just like being pretentious, or it's like desire. It's like I think it's more about greed, like a certain kind of aesthetic greed. But I've gotten really into like movies because it's like it's everything, right? Like sounds and images and writing, and it's every single thing, right? And so like filmmakers, I think have become like increasingly more important to me or
Yeah.
something. Like there's this dude named Amir Kusturica who's very controversial politically, but makes like very beautiful movies. He's
Mm.
Serbian. It's not easy to, I know it's like complicated. I think he thinks of himself as Yugoslavian. He's an amazing filmmaker. Agnes Varda,
Mm.
everybody
Oh.
loves her. She's uncomplicated politically, so that's nice.
Always
Good.
always good.
She was like a really amazing person. Yeah, so I don't know, like that has become increasingly an important kind of, yeah, just like where I go to like feel energized by art filmmaking. Yeah.
That's super cool.
I go to filmmaking to feel energized by art.
I also love films. I feel like I'm more of a movie person.
Yeah, I feel you.
You
I
know,
feel you.
there's films and there's
Mhm.
There's
movies.
films and there's movies.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm more like, I wish I was a film
Mhm.
guy, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely like an action adventure like movie
Yeah.
guy, you know?
I mean, there's nothing.
Nothing wrong
Yeah,
with
there's
that.
nothing wrong with that. What are
Yeah.
what action adventure movies?
Oh well gosh. Okay, well I love Star Wars. Okay.
Nice,
I'm a big
nice.
Star Wars fan.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's all I'll
Mm.
say.
mythologies. Yeah,
I love a space
Hero's
odyssey,
Journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
We watch a lot of Star Trek.
We
We
do.
do watch a lot of
Mm.
Star Trek. Real comfort. Just the
Oh yeah.
background noise
Yes.
of the ship, you
Mhm.
know? Hell
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, somehow we've gotten to the final question of our
Nice.
interview, and that is, we usually, you know, for songwriters usually are always interviewing songwriters, but this season we've wanted to broaden and incorporate, you know, more people in art and the music industry and all sorts of stuff. And we usually ask, why do you write songs? But for this episode, we'll just ask, why do you write?
Well, do you wanna do this one? I'll think.
You want to think about it for a minute? Yeah.
He always
Yeah.
makes you go first.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to trade off. I just not too much.
I don't know. I feel like I've been thinking a lot about this recently. I think that like I've always been a person like I had this like deep memory the other day of like when I was a little tiny kid. I was like I have like a memory that goes back until like I can remember like seeing my little sister for the first time when I was like a year and a half old, like that kind of stuff. Like it's just a really long reaching memory, but I have this memory. I had this memory that I had not thought of or had forgotten about or something. But like when I was very little, I would like lie, like to put myself to sleep. I would like talk to myself and like tell myself
Yeah.
stories. And like I feel like that's just the way that I've been my whole life in kind of an inescapable. Like I wanted to be an astronaut when I was like when I was a little older. And I was like I'm so bad at math and like all of that. Like it was not in the cards, and I just like I really tried, and I really like resented for a long time that I was a writer and that I was going to be a writer. Like even my parents were like, you should go do that. You should go to like graduate school for writing. And I was like, no, that's not important enough for something. And especially for like being a poet, I guess, is like specifically being a poet. And I do think that like, I don't know, if I like found out tomorrow that I was never going to get published again or something, or never do a reading again or whatever, like I would still write.
Yeah.
And it's because it's not even about like doing it for other people. It's about like what you do for yourself to like get around in the world the way that it is, and like figure out what kind of person you're supposed to be all the time or something. And like I mean, I think a lot of writing is also like, yeah, being in conversation with other people, other writers, or like, you know, doing something that you hope someone who is like you is going to see and feel like good about or inspired by. But honestly,
Pay
I
it
do feel
forward.
like
Yeah.
a lot of creating, at least for me, is like what do you do to like self-soothe or rescue yourself, or like
Yeah.
remind yourself of like where you belong, or like what kind of life you're supposed to have, like over and over and over again. Whether that's like self-mythologizing or like, I don't know. You know, I think it's just like one of those things that you do to like make meaning in your life. And um I think it does become something that other people will see and enjoy and like find a lot of meaning in too. But I think fundamentally it is like an act that you, or that at least that I find a lot of comfort or like satisfaction in by itself as like an act, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very similar for me, like trying to find meaning. And I think that, I mean, I feel like this answer, I mean, in some fundamental way, it's just inescapable, right? Like you don't know why. You're just compelled. And then like your answer is you try to figure yourself out, like changes over the years. And I think most recently for me, yeah, it's especially like this impulse of like the world being very chaotic and also feeling like stories that you see, that you receive in culture are not right. and and like that combined with, yeah, like sometimes they are, and sometimes you hear a John Prine song when you're 16, you're like, oh my God, that felt so good to, and it felt so true that now I feel like I have this it almost feels, the compulsion feels like a responsibility, or it's not quite the right word, but like you want to pay it forward. You were like, yeah, that felt so good. I would like to be not only the recipient, but like the, you know, like purveyor of that feeling. And I think a lot of the new Clementine Was Right songs, like on the new album and stuff, are very much about, yeah, like there's this I'm always like writing extra stuff, you know, like promote the songs or whatever, or like
Yeah.
do this world building around all the songs. And there was one I just did the other day that was like what are you supposed to miss? Like what do you really miss? You know? And like I think that those two questions, like in relationship to each other, really define a lot of my motivation for writing. And I don't know, like I also think about, like there's this one song that I wrote that's on the first album called Nazarene Sheen, that's like about like a school bus driver, and like the first line is like, no, it wasn't like that, with Nazarene Sheen. And part of it was just like me being cute, because like I wrote that song when I was 19, and like I have the kind of brain that was like, what would be like a clever like first line that is not a normal first line of a song, and like refuting something that has like jumping in mid conversation felt clever to me when I was 19 or whatever. But I do feel like the act, right, of saying no, it wasn't like that, and then you however you follow that up with, whether you're trying to say it was like this, or you're going somewhere else, but you are no longer moving with the story as it's received. You are like bending towards something new, you know, and that's I think a lot of my motivation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, that does. I think like honestly, both of your answers to that question were really rejuvenating. Like as a creative person, kind of hearing, it's always so nice. That's always my favorite question. And I feel like it's usually your favorite question too, Caroline. Like it's always so fun to hear the varying like reasons, and also just like I guess reasons or explanations as to why people write or like write songs. And it's always like really rejuvenating, and that was really rejuvenating. You guys are so articulate.
You really are. I'm like, can you host the podcast?
And, like, well
because
spoken.
I'm over here like, and this one,
y'all, the record, you recorded that with Ben Paisano, right?
That's right. Yeah, with Ben and of Corsicana, and
Full circle. We just interviewed him yesterday.
Oh, sick.
Oh,
Very
cool.
cool. Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, and that record will be coming out in the spring
Woo.
by all
Awesome.
accounts, and I think it will be coming out. I think I'm allowed to say this. I think it's like pretty much a done deal, but yeah, it will be coming out on vinyl on this new record label out of Memphis called Red Curtain Records. Um, that because we recorded a lot of it in Memphis, and then a lot of it here in Denver.
My
We
God.
recorded a lot of it in Memphis with this dude named Scott McEwen at Memphis Magnetic, um, and with our friends Nate's Marriage, who's a wonderful guitar player, and then Dick Darden, and then here in Denver, yeah, with
Mm.
Ben and Riley and Adam and Alec, and also Clarissa. Pretty much everybody we know in our lives is on this record,
Yes,
more
that's
or less.
incredible.
Um, yeah, and so yeah, it's coming out in the spring. Ben mixed it.
Mhm.
I feel really excited about it. The single it's called There Are No More Almond Trees. And yeah, it's another one I sort of like I don't know, I have a fair number of songs that I like wrote the I guess you'd call it the first draft of them when I was like
Mm.
19. And I am not 19 anymore. I don't know why I'm afraid of it's just such a fucking like youth centric culture with
Mm.
music. I just feel
I
embarrassed. I'm
know.
37. Um, he said apologetically for no reason.
No.
Like, you don't
Yeah.
sound so.
I'm sorry I
Yeah.
didn't die when I was younger. But yeah, and then I like it just yeah, I mean, if I had released it when I was 19, it would have been a lot
Mm.
worse. Also because I didn't know Riley Marino when I was 19, and he played like a really sick lead line on it, and
Gotcha.
Adam's playing bass and Clarissa's playing the drums, and our friend Austin Carroll, who I think you know in town, he's singing on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Austin Carroll and the Better Neighbors. Yeah, he's a great songwriter. Love his songs. And he sings on it. Adam sings on it. Is there anybody else on that song? I don't think there's anybody else on that
Adam
song.
is
Oh,
so
Jake
shy
plays a
about
little
his
keys on it.
voice.
Oh yeah, Jake.
Jake DeMarco plays a
That's
little keys on
awesome.
that song, yeah. And it's
Amazing.
just like a you know, it's a song about like there were all these wildfires and you know, the California that I grew up in, thanks to
Mm.
climate change, environmental degradation is it's all falling apart, but you know, the nature of entropy, everything's all falling apart. So how do you deal with the world that you grew up with falling apart and friends drifting away from each other, and then you still want to feel
Mm.
really anthemic,
Yeah.
you know, to like get through the day to day. So that's the song. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what was the name of it again?
There are no more almond trees. And Gion helped me change the chorus. It kind of sucked. And then Gion helped me make it not suck. Yeah.
Yes. Yay,
Co-writing.
co-writing.
Yeah, we did that one was a cool writing
That one was
feature
a
for
co-writing.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the chorus for sure.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, this is There Are No More Almond Trees by Clementine Was Right.
Almonds, 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 olives, almonds, wild tuna. Miss the words for different birds, the fog in Petaluma. California's burning all the in and outs and fluids. All my friends keep whispering, good night, I guess we blew it. All my friends keep whispering, good night, I guess we blew it.
We tumble down the spillway, hit the shindig feeling fucked. So we shoot the chef's billboard, make a blood pact with our thumbs. Travis has a kid now, Jesse moved to Tennessee. You can smell the fentanyl behind the T-ball team. Travis likes to stay up, frying eggs and standing still. Jesse took his shirt off in the desert near the well. He stared into the well, and he yelled into the world. There are no more almond trees. There are no more rocket ships. All my friends keep whispering, love you, but I feel like forget it, forget it again. Forget it, forget it, are you still mine? Forget it, forget it, forget it again. Forget it, forget it, are you still mine? fill up our smiles. So we stencil fucking thrifties, leave the ice cream in a pile. Hunter has a double chin, Charlene was in Iraq. Hunter stocks the vegetables, restocks the beauty racks. Charlene sprays a screen to screen with red most every night. Hunter drinks his 40, then begs everyone to fight. Everyone should fight. Everyone alive. There are no more almond trees. There are no more rocket ships. All my friends keep whispering, love you, but I feel like forget it again. Forget it, are you still mine? Forget it again. Forget it, are you still mine? Friend.
I'll miss Travis, I'll miss Jesse, I'll miss Hunter's double chin, I'll miss Charlene, she made the